Scenarist Yulia Yakovenko. Kiki Symvolov, 44030. Nazwa. My wife texted me, I'm going to a work event tonight, but I noticed a strange vibe. I replied, preview. My wife texted me, I'm going to a work event tonight, but I noticed a strange vibe. I replied calmly, you know what? I'll be there. At the party, I saw her with her boss. After 24 hours, things started unraveling for her. Story. The iPad notification chimed at exactly 11:47 p.m., right when I thought Ashley was finally asleep. I was downstairs in my workshop, sanding the rough edges off a custom cabinet door for the Henderson project, when the sound drifted down through the old floorboards of our main farmhouse. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Funny thing about being a contractor, you develop an ear for sounds that don't belong. A settling beam versus a shifting foundation, a loose shingle versus a raccoon in the attic, and the soft ping of a message arriving on a device that should have been silent. I climbed the creaking stairs, work boots heavy on the worn wood. Ashley lay sprawled across our king-sized bed, auburn hair fanned across the pillow, breathing deep and even. The iPad glowed on her nightstand like a digital beacon. Mark Avery, I told myself, you're being paranoid. 15 years of marriage, and you're jumping at email notifications like some jealous teenager. But I looked anyway. The message preview showed just enough to make my stomach clench. VIP Leadership Mixer, Community Center, Saturday 7 p.m. Exclusive invitation for Ashley Avery plus. Plus what? Plus one? Plus her husband? Plus her boss Richard Hall, the smooth-talking marketing executive who'd been finding excuses to visit our house for strategy sessions every other week? I memorized the details and slipped back downstairs. In my workshop, surrounded by the familiar smell of sawdust and wood stain, I tried to convince myself I was overreacting. Ashley ran the creative department at Coastal Marketing Solutions. She attended work events. It was normal, except she'd never mentioned this one. The next morning, I made coffee and scrambled eggs, while Ashley rushed through her usual routine. Shower, blow dry, the careful application of makeup that made her green eyes pop and covered the tiny lines that had started appearing around them. At 34, she still turned heads when we went out together. When we used to go out together. Sleep well? I asked, sliding a plate across our kitchen island. Like a rock. She barely looked up from her phone. Thanks for breakfast, but I'm running late. Big presentation today. Anything exciting this weekend? I was thinking we could drive up to Bar Harbor, maybe check out that antique shop you liked. Ashley paused, coffee mug halfway to her lips. Actually, I might have a work thing Saturday night. Nothing major, just some networking event. Want company? I promise not to embarrass you by talking about drywall installation. She laughed, but it sounded forced. It's really boring work stuff, Mark. You'd hate it. Besides, didn't you say you wanted to finish the Henderson project this weekend? I had said that 3 weeks ago. Right. Well, have fun networking. After Ashley left in her silver Lexus, the one her recent promotion had supposedly paid for, I sat in the kitchen drinking my second cup of coffee and staring out at the October morning. The maple trees in our yard blazed red and gold, and Mrs. Langley next door was already out raking leaves at 7:30 a.m. That woman had more energy at 75 than most people half her age. I'd met Ashley 12 years ago at a 4th of July barbecue in Portland. I was 26, fresh out of the Army Corps of Engineers, trying to build a contracting business from nothing. She was 22, a recent college graduate with a marketing degree and ambitions that sparkled brighter than the fireworks that night. You're the guy who builds things, she'd said, appearing at my elbow while I nursed a beer and watched the crowd. Among other things. I like that. Building something that lasts, she'd smiled. And I was gone. For 10 years it felt like we were building something together. The business grew. We bought this house, a 1920s farmhouse that needed everything, and spent weekends transforming it room by room. Ashley had an eye for design, and I had the skills to make her visions real. But somewhere in the last 2 years, the weekends had become about her career, her networking events, her need to establish herself in the industry. The house projects sat half-finished. The conversations grew shorter, and Richard Hall started showing up. I'd met Richard exactly once, at Ashley's company Christmas party 18 months ago. Tall, Silver-haired, expensive suit, firm handshake, and the kind of smile that made you want to check your wallet afterward. He'd complimented my work on our kitchen renovation. Ashley had apparently shown him photos and suggested I should consider scaling up my business. There's real money in commercial development, he'd said, one hand casually resting on Ashley's shoulder. Ashley's told me you're quite talented. The way he'd said talented made it sound like a cute hobby, like woodworking or model trains. Now I stood in that kitchen, looking at the custom cabinets I'd built, the tile work I'd laid, the breakfast nook I'd designed specifically because Ashley loved to sit there with her coffee and watch the sunrise. And I wondered when I'd become the plus one who didn't get invited. My phone buzzed. Tommy Brennan, my oldest friend and the most reliable mechanic in 3 counties. Hey Mark, got a minute? Need to ask you something about that cabinet job for my office. Sure, what's up? Can you swing by the shop? Rather talk in person. Tommy's auto repair sat on the edge of town, a no-nonsense garage that smelled like motor oil and honest work. I found Tommy under the hood of a Ford pickup, his grease-stained hands working with the same precision I used on my carpentry. What's the story with the cabinets? I asked. Tommy straightened up, wiping his hands on a rag. Actually, that's not why I called. He looked uncomfortable. Mark, we've been friends since high school. I feel like I should tell you something. My chest tightened. Tell me what? Ashley's car was here yesterday. Brought it in for an oil change. He paused, choosing his words carefully. She wasn't alone. Richard Hall? You know him? Her boss. What about it? Tommy studied my face. They seemed close, real close, and when I mentioned I knew you, Ashley looked like she'd seen a ghost. Asked me not to mention she'd been here. I nodded slowly. Thanks for telling me. Mark, I might be wrong. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe. But I knew it wasn't nothing. You don't ask people to keep secrets about oil changes unless you're hiding something bigger. That evening, Ashley came home with takeout Chinese and a story about her exhausting day. She seemed nervous, talking too much, laughing too loud at her own jokes. When I mentioned running into Tommy, she went very still. Oh, how's he doing? Good. Said he saw you yesterday. Did he? Her voice climbed half an octave. I don't remember seeing him. At his garage, when you got your oil changed. Ashley set down her chopsticks. Right, yes, I forgot. It was quick. He said you weren't alone. For just a moment, her mask slipped. I saw panic flicker across her features before she composed herself. Richard needed his car looked at, too. We carpooled. Saves gas, you know. Environmental responsibility. Richard Hall drove a Porsche 911. The idea of him getting his oil changed at Tommy's garage was like imagining a shark shopping for vegetarian recipes. Makes sense, I said. That night, after Ashley fell asleep, I lay staring at the ceiling and listening to the old house settle around us. 15 years of marriage, and I was reduced to playing detective with my own wife, but I'd been a combat engineer in Afghanistan. I knew how to gather intelligence. I knew how to plan, and I knew how to execute a mission when the time came. The question was, what kind of mission was this going to be? Saturday morning arrived gray and drizzling, typical October weather in Maine. Ashley slept late, which wasn't unusual for weekends, but when she finally emerged from the bedroom at nearly 11, she was already dressed and checking her phone. Morning, I said from the kitchen, where I'd been nursing coffee and sketching plans for a deck renovation. Sleep okay? Fine. She poured herself coffee and leaned against the counter, scrolling through messages. I might head into the office for a few hours, prep for tonight's event. The networking thing. She wasn't looking at me. What time does it start again? 7. Quick answer, like she'd rehearsed it. And it's at... Now she looked up. The community center. Why? Just curious. Maybe I'll grab dinner at Murphy's Pub, catch the game. Something relaxed in her posture. That sounds nice. You should do that. After Ashley left, I sat in my workshop and thought about the situation logically. I had suspicions but no proof. I could confront her directly, but if I was wrong, I'd damage our marriage over nothing. If I was right, she'd just get better at hiding it, or I could find out for sure. I'd installed the family tracking app on our phones 2 years ago, after Ashley got lost during a business trip to Boston. She'd agreed it was a good safety measure. I pulled up the app now and watched the blue dot that represented her location. She wasn't at her office. She was at the Riverside Mall, 20 minutes away. For 3 hours, the dot moved between various stores. Victoria's Secret, Nordstrom, a jewelry store, The kind of shopping Ashley used to do with me, back when we had things to celebrate together. At 4 o'clock, she came home with several shopping bags and a story about picking up a few things for work. The bags went straight to our bedroom closet. "I'm going to start getting ready," she announced. "Tonight's kind of a big deal. Some important clients will be there." "Anyone I'd know?" "Probably not. Industry people." I nodded and went back to my sketching. But I was planning something entirely different now. At 6:15, Ashley emerged from the bedroom transformed. She wore a black cocktail dress I'd never seen before, something that hugged her curves and showed just enough skin to be interesting. Her hair was styled in loose waves, and she'd applied makeup with the skill of a professional artist. She looked stunning. She also looked like a woman getting dressed for a date. "Wow," I said, and meant it. "Lucky networking event." She blushed, actually blushed, and kissed my cheek. "Don't wait up. These things can run late." After her Lexus disappeared down our gravel driveway, I showered, shaved, and put on my best suit, navy blue, tailored, the one Ashley had insisted I buy for her company's annual dinner last year. If I was crashing this party, I was going to look the part. The community center sat in the middle of town, a renovated 1950s building that hosted everything from wedding receptions to town meetings. When I pulled into the parking lot at 7:30, I spotted Ashley's Lexus immediately. It was parked next to a silver Porsche 911. Environmental responsibility, my ass. The main hall was decorated with white tablecloths and soft lighting. Maybe 40 people mingled around cocktail tables, the men in suits, the women in cocktail dresses. A banner hung across the far wall. Coastal Marketing Solutions, Leadership Excellence Awards. I recognized several faces from Ashley's Christmas party. This wasn't some random networking event. This was her company's internal celebration, the kind of thing spouses were normally invited to. I grabbed a drink from the bar and positioned myself near the back of the room, where I could observe without being obvious. It didn't take long to spot Ashley. She stood near the center of the room, wine glass in hand, laughing at something Richard Hall was saying. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. And he stood just close enough to Ashley that their shoulders touched when he leaned in to speak. I watched them for 20 minutes. The casual touches, the way she tilted her head when he whispered in her ear, the way he rested his hand on the small of her back when they moved through the crowd. It was subtle, but unmistakable. They were together. "Mark Avery? Is that you?" I turned to find Julia Martinez, one of Ashley's coworkers, approaching with a surprised smile. Julia was about Ashley's age, with dark hair and intelligent eyes. I'd met her several times at company functions. "Hi, Julia. Good to see you. I didn't expect to see you here tonight. Ashley said you were busy with work." Change of plans, thought I'd surprise her. Julia's smile faltered slightly. "Oh, that's nice. You seem surprised." "No, not surprised. Just," she glanced across the room toward Ashley and Richard. "Maybe you should go say hello." I followed her gaze. Ashley was still deep in conversation with Richard, completely absorbed. She hadn't noticed me yet. "In a minute. How's work treating you?" "Good, busy. We've been putting in a lot of extra hours lately." Julia sipped her wine, choosing her words carefully. "Ashley's been working very closely with Richard on some new initiatives. So I've heard. They seem to make a good team. They certainly spend a lot of time together." There was something in her tone, not quite disapproval, but not approval either. Julia struck me as the type who noticed everything and said little. "Julia, can I ask you something?" "Sure. As someone who works with Ashley every day, does she seem happy to you?" Julia studied my face for a long moment. "That's a complicated question, Mark. Try me. Ashley's ambitious. She wants to succeed, to be recognized, to move up in the company. Sometimes that drive can make people make choices they might not otherwise make." Before I could respond, a voice called out from across the room. "Mark, what a surprise." Richard Hall was approaching, Ashley at his side. Her face had gone pale beneath her carefully applied makeup. "Richard," I shook his offered hand. "Ashley told me about the event. Thought I'd stop by and support the team." "How thoughtful." Richard's smile was perfect and cold. "Though I thought Ashley mentioned you had other plans tonight." "I finished early." Ashley found her voice. "Mark, you should have called. We could have come together?" I suggested. "That would have been nice." An uncomfortable silence settled over our little group. Julia excused herself, but not before giving me a look that seemed to say, "Good luck." Well, Richard said, since you're here, let me introduce you to some people. Ashley's been telling everyone about your renovation work. For the next hour, I played the role of the supportive husband, making small talk with Ashley's colleagues while she and Richard maintained a careful distance from each other. But I kept noticing things. The way Richard's eyes followed Ashley around the room, the way she unconsciously touched her necklace, a nervous habit, whenever he spoke to other people, the way they seemed to communicate with glances. And at 9:30, Richard took the microphone to present some awards. Ashley received recognition for outstanding creative leadership. And when she went up to accept her plaque, Richard's hand lingered on hers just a moment too long. The applause died down, and people began to leave. Ashley appeared at my elbow, purse clutched tightly in her hands. Ready to go? She asked. Absolutely. We walked to our cars in silence. In the parking lot, under the yellow glow of the streetlights, Ashley finally spoke. Why did you really come tonight, Mark? I could have lied, could have made up some story about wanting to support her, about finishing work early, about being a good husband. Instead, I told her the truth. Because you didn't invite me. She looked away. It wasn't that kind of event. What kind of event was it, Ashley? Work. Just work. Is that what you call it? Her head snapped back toward me. What's that supposed to mean? It means I have eyes. It means I'm not stupid. And it means we need to have a conversation. For a moment, I thought she might confess everything. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. Then her expression hardened. I don't know what you think you saw, but you're wrong. Am I? Yes. Richard is my boss. We work together, that's all. I nodded slowly. Okay. If that's your story, then that's your story. I got in my truck and drove home, leaving Ashley standing in the parking lot beside her Lexus and Richard's Porsche. In my rearview mirror, I watched her pull out her phone. At home, I sat in my workshop until nearly midnight, not working on anything, just thinking about 15 years of marriage, about the woman I'd fallen in love with and the stranger she'd become, about the choices that lay ahead. My phone buzzed with a text from Ashley. Staying at Mom's tonight. Need some space to think. Ashley's mother lived in Florida. She was lying again. I poured myself 3 fingers of bourbon and made a decision. If Ashley wanted to play games, I could play games too. But I'd been a combat engineer. I knew something about strategy that she didn't. When you're planning to bring down a structure, you don't attack it head on. You find the weak points. You apply pressure gradually. And you make sure that when it falls exactly where you want it to. Ashley didn't come home Sunday or Monday. She texted sporadically. Still at Mom's. Need more time. Please understand. But when I called her mother's house in Tampa, Mrs. Chen told me Ashley wasn't there and hadn't been there in months. Tuesday morning, I drove past Ashley's office building and spotted her Lexus in the parking lot. So much for needing space to think in Florida. I spent the day working on the Henderson project, but my mind kept wandering. 15 years of marriage, and it had come to this, my wife lying about her whereabouts while she figured out how to handle her affair. That evening, Tommy called. Hey Mark, you got a minute? I'm at Murphy's pub with some of the guys. Why don't you come down, have a beer? Murphy's was the kind of place where locals went to drink away their troubles. Dim lighting, worn wooden floors, and a bartender who minded his own business. I found Tommy at a corner table with Dave Morrison and Pete Silva, guys I'd known since high school. Look what the cat dragged in, Dave said as I approached. Haven't seen you around much lately. Been busy with work. How's Ashley? Pete asked. Haven't seen her at any of the town events recently. Tommy shot him a warning look, but it was too late. The question hung in the air like smoke. She's fine, working a lot. An uncomfortable silence settled over the table. Finally, Dave cleared his throat. Mark, we've been friends for 20 years. You know we've got your back, right? Right. So when we tell you something, it's because we care about you, not because we want to cause trouble. My stomach clenched. What are you talking about? Pete leaned forward. Ashley's been seen around town, with that guy from her work, the one with the fancy car, Richard Hall. That's him. They've been at the Riverside Inn twice this week, having dinner, looking pretty cozy. The Riverside Inn was the nicest restaurant in the area, the kind of place couples went for anniversaries and special occasions. Ashley and I hadn't eaten there in 2 years. They work together, I said, the words tasting like sawdust in my mouth. Mark, Tommy's voice was gentle. This isn't work. Everyone in town is talking about it. Everyone in town. In a place like ours, that was a death sentence for a marriage. Once the gossip mill started turning, there was no stopping it. What exactly are people saying? Dave and Pete exchanged glances. Tommy answered, that Ashley Avery's having an affair with her boss, that she's been lying to her husband, that she thinks she's too good for this town now that she's got her fancy job and her fancy boyfriend. Each word hit like a physical blow. It was one thing to suspect your wife was cheating. It was another to learn that everyone you'd grown up with knew about it and was discussing it over their morning coffee. I'm sorry, man, Pete said. We thought you should know. I nodded and excused myself, walking out into the October night. The air was crisp, carrying the smell of wood smoke from someone's fireplace. Normal people were having normal evenings with their families, and I was standing in a parking lot, processing the fact that my marriage had become the town's entertainment. My phone buzzed. Ashley, can we talk? I'm ready to come home. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I typed back, I'll be here. She arrived an hour later, pulling into our driveway like she was approaching a crime scene. Through the kitchen window, I watched her sit in her car for several minutes before finally getting out. She came through the front door, carrying an overnight bag, her face carefully composed. Hi, she said. Hi. I know we need to talk. Do we? She set down her bag and moved into the living room, perching on the edge of the couch we'd picked out together 8 years ago. I remained standing. Mark, I want you to know that nothing happened, nothing physical. It was interesting that she led with that. Not I love you, or I'm sorry, or I want to save our marriage. Just a denial of physical contact. Okay, I mean it. Richard and I work closely together, and maybe we became friends, but that's all. Friends who have dinner at the Riverside Inn. Her composure cracked slightly. You've been checking up on me. I didn't have to. Half the town's been checking up on you. Ashley's face went white. What do you mean? I mean, everyone knows, Ashley. Everyone's talking about it. My friends felt sorry enough for me to stage an intervention at Murphy's pub tonight. She buried her face in her hands. Oh, God. So let's try this again. What exactly is your relationship with Richard Hall? For a long moment, the only sound was the old house settling around us. Then Ashley looked up, and I saw something I'd never seen before in her eyes. Calculation. Richard understands me in ways that maybe you don't anymore. Meaning? Meaning I have ambitions, Mark. I want to build something bigger than this. She gestured around our living room. Richard sees that, he encourages it, and I don't? You're content. You're happy with your little contracting business, and this house, and this town, but I want more. The words stung because there was truth in them. I was content with my life. I liked building things with my hands, liked being my own boss, liked the rhythm of small-town living. When had that become a character flaw? So you're having an affair because I'm not ambitious enough? I'm not having an affair. The words came out sharp and loud. We talk, we have dinner sometimes. We connect on a level that you and I haven't connected on in years. Do you love him? The question hung between us like a blade. Ashley's mouth opened, closed, opened again. I don't know. And there it was, the truth that made everything else irrelevant. Do you love me? This time the pause was even longer. I don't know that either. I nodded slowly. Well, at least you're being honest now. Mark, I don't want to hurt you. I never wanted this to happen. But it did happen. Yes, and everyone in town knows about it. Yes, and you're not sure if you love your husband of 15 years. I'm confused. I need time to figure things out. I walked to the window and looked out at the yard we'd landscaped together, the garden Ashley had planted when we first moved in. The flowers were dying now, killed by the first frost. Here's what's going to happen, I said without turning around. You're going to make a choice, tonight, right now. Mark, I can't. Yes, you can, I faced her. You're going to choose Richard or you're going to choose me, but you're not going to choose both, and you're not going to string me along while you figure out your feelings. Ashley's eyes filled with tears. That's not fair. Fair? Something cold and hard settled in my chest. You want to talk about fair? Fair would have been having this conversation before you started having dinner dates with your boss. Fair would have been telling me you were unhappy, instead of letting me hear about your affair from my drinking buddies. It's not an affair. Then what is it, Ashley? What do you call it when a married woman lies to her husband so she can spend time with another man? When she buys new dresses and stays out late and makes up stories about visiting her mother? She was crying now, but I felt nothing. The hurt had crystallized into something harder. I choose you, she whispered. I choose our marriage. Do you? Yes. I'll end things with Richard. I'll transfer to another department, or find a new job if I have to. We can go to counseling. We can fix this. I studied her face. The face I'd been looking at for 15 years. The face I'd once thought I'd grow old with. It's too late for that. No, it's not. Mark, please. I made a mistake, but it's not too late. Yes, it is. Because you didn't choose me, Ashley. You got caught, and now you're trying to minimize the damage. That's not true. Isn't it? If Tommy hadn't seen you together, if the whole town wasn't talking, would you be here right now asking for forgiveness? Or would you still be having dinner at the Riverside Inn, trying to figure out your feelings? She didn't answer, which was answer enough. I want you to pack your things, I said quietly. Tonight. Mark, please, pack your things and go. Go to Richard's place, go to a hotel, go wherever you want, but don't stay here. This is my house too. No, it's not. I built this house. I renovated every room, installed every fixture, painted every wall. You picked out some furniture and complained about the dust. The words came out colder than I'd intended, but I didn't take them back. Ashley stood up, anger flashing in her eyes. So that's it? 15 years of marriage, and you're throwing it away over nothing? I'm not throwing anything away. You already did that. She stared at me for a long moment, and I saw the exact instant when hurt transformed into fury. Fine. You want to be the victim in this story? Go ahead. But don't pretend you're innocent, Mark. Don't pretend you've been the perfect husband. I never claimed to be perfect. No? Then maybe you should ask yourself why I needed to find understanding somewhere else. Maybe you should think about the last time you really listened to me, or supported my dreams, or made me feel like I was more than just the woman who picks out your furniture. She grabbed her overnight bag and headed for the stairs. I'll get the rest of my things tomorrow while you're at work. Ashley. She stopped at the bottom of the staircase. For what it's worth, I did love you. For 15 years, I loved you more than anything in the world. Her face crumpled. Past tense? Past tense. She went upstairs, and I heard drawers opening and closing, hangers rattling in the closet. 20 minutes later, she came back down with 2 suitcases and a garment bag. At the front door, she turned back one last time. I really did choose you, Mark. I meant that. I know you did. But you chose me because you got caught, not because you wanted to. There's a difference. After her taillights disappeared down the driveway, I sat in my workshop with a bottle of bourbon and tried to process what had just happened. 15 years of marriage ended in a single conversation. But as I sat there in the familiar smell of sawdust and wood stain, surrounded by the tools I'd used to build a life, I realized something surprising. I felt relieved. The uncertainty was over. The pretending was over. The careful dance of trying to save something that was already dead was over. Now came the hard part. Figuring out what to do next. The divorce papers arrived on a Thursday morning in November, delivered by a courier who looked apologetic as he handed over the manila envelope. I signed for them at my kitchen table, the same table where Ashley and I had shared breakfast for 10 years. I'd been expecting them. Ashley had moved in with Richard 3 weeks after our confrontation. Not officially, of course, but everyone in town knew where her car spent the night. She'd hired a lawyer from Portland, someone who didn't know our history and could treat the dissolution of our marriage like a business transaction. The papers were thorough. Ashley wanted half of everything: the house, my business assets, our savings, even my tools. Her lawyer had done his homework. I called my own attorney, Jim Walsh, a local guy who'd handled the legal work when I incorporated my business. She's asking for a lot, Jim said after reviewing the documents. More than she's entitled to, in my opinion. But that's probably a negotiating position. What are my options? We can fight it, drag it out for months, maybe years, cost you a fortune in legal fees. Or we can try to negotiate something reasonable. What would reasonable look like? Given that she's the one who left the marriage, and given that most of your assets are tied up in the business you built before and during the marriage, I'd say she's entitled to maybe 30%. The house, probably not, since you owned it before you got married and did all the renovation work yourself. I thought about it. I could fight. I could make Ashley's life difficult, drag her through depositions and hearings, force her to explain her relationship with Richard in front of a judge. Part of me wanted to, but another part of me just wanted it over. Set up a meeting, I told Jim. Let's see what she really wants. The meeting took place the following Tuesday at Jim's office, a converted Victorian house on Main Street. Ashley arrived with her lawyer, a sharp-dressed woman named Patricia Morse, who looked like she ate small-town contractors for breakfast. Ashley looked different, thinner, more polished, like she'd been buffed to a high shine. She wore a charcoal business suit I'd never seen before and had cut her hair shorter, more professional. She looked successful. She also looked like a stranger. "Mark," she said with a careful smile. "You look well." "Thanks. You too." We sat across from each other at Jim's conference table, lawyers flanking us like seconds in a duel. Patricia Morse opened a leather portfolio and got straight to business. "My client is prepared to be reasonable," she began, "but she's also entitled to her fair share of the marital assets." For the next 2 hours, we negotiated,